Ha hadn't found cheese yet, but as he ran through the maze he thought about what he had already learned. Ha now realized that his new beliefs were encouraging new behaviors. He was behaving differently than when he kept returning to the same cheeseless station. He knew when you change what you believe, you change what you do. You can believe that a change will harm you and resist it, or you can believe that finding new cheese will help you and embrace the change. It all depends on what you choose to believe. He wrote on the wall, "When you see that you can find and enjoy new cheese, you change course." Ha knew he would be in better shape now if he had dealt with the change much sooner and left Cheese Station C earlier. He would have felt stronger in body and spirit, and he could have coped better with the challenge of finding new cheese. In fact, he probably would have found it by now if he had expected change, rather than wasting time denying that change had already taken place. He used his imagination again and saw himself finding and savoring new cheese. He decided to proceed into the more unknown parts of the maze, and found little bits of cheese here and there. Ha began to regain his strength and confidence. As he thought back on where he had come from, Ha was glad he had written on the wall in many places. He trusted that it would serve as a marked trail for him to follow through the maze if he chose to leave Cheese Station C. Ha just hoped he was heading in the right direction. He thought about the possibility that Hem would read the handwriting on the wall and find his way. He wrote on the wall what he had been thinking about for some time. Noticing small changes early helps you adapt to the bigger changes that are to come. By now, Ha had let go of the past and was adapting to the present. He continued on through the maze with greater strength and speed, and before long it happened. When it seemed like he had been in the maze forever, his journey, or at least this part of his journey, ended quickly and happily. Ha proceeded along a corridor that was new to him, rounded a corner, and found new cheese at Cheese Station N. When he went inside, he was startled by what he saw. Piled high everywhere was the greatest supply of cheese he had ever seen. He didn't recognize all that he saw. Some kinds of cheeses were new to him. Then he wondered for a moment whether it was real or just his imagination, until he saw his old friends Sniff and Scurry. Sniff welcomed Ha with a nod of his head, and Scurry waved his paw. Their fat little bellies showed that they had been here for some time. Ha quickly said his hellos and soon took bites of every one of his favorite cheeses. He pulled off his shoes, tied the laces together, and hung them around his neck in case he needed them again. Sniff and Scurry laughed. They nodded their heads in admiration. Then Ha jumped into the new cheese. When he had eaten his fill, he lifted a piece of fresh cheese and made a toast. Hooray for change! As Ha enjoyed the new cheese, he reflected on what he had learned. He realized that when he had been afraid to change, he had been holding on to the illusion of old cheese that was no longer there. So what was it that made him change? Was it the fear of starving to death? Ha smiled as he thought it certainly helped. Then he laughed and realized that he had started to change as soon as he had learned to laugh at himself, at what he had been doing wrong. He realized the fastest way to change is to laugh at your own folly. Then you can let go and quickly move on. He knew he had learned something useful about moving on from his mice friends, Sniff and Scurry. They kept life simple. They didn't overanalyze or overcomplicate things. When the situation changed and the cheese had been moved, they changed and moved with the cheese. He would remember that. Ha had also used his wonderful brain to do what little people do better than mice. He envisioned himself in realistic detail, finding something better, much better. He reflected on the mistakes he had made in the past and used them to plan for his future. He knew that you could learn to deal with change. You could be more aware of the need to keep things simple, be flexible, and move quickly. You did not need to overcomplicate matters or confuse yourself with fearful beliefs. You could notice when the little changes began so that you would be better prepared for the big changes that might be coming. He knew he needed to adapt faster, for if you did not adapt in time, you might as well not adapt at all. He had to admit that the biggest inhibitor to change lies within yourself, that nothing gets better until you change. Perhaps most importantly, he realized that there is always new cheese out there, whether you recognize it at the time or not, and that you are rewarded with it when you go past your fear and enjoy the adventure. He knew some fear should be respected, as it can keep you out of real danger. But he realized most of his fears were irrational, and he had kept him from changing when he needed to. He didn't like it at the time, but he knew that the change had turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as it led him to find better cheese. He had even found a better part of himself.